Good evening, viewers. I'm sorry if I'm slightly late in bringing out this episode to my channel. I'm trying to ignite a small spark to make a blaze of fervor in your minds. We're going through a very tough situation. There is a pandemic almost at our thresholds, and there's a lot of apprehension and anxiety in the minds of many. The people who are old and the people who are having some other disease to go at hand, and there may be speculation at rife very secretly in their minds whether they'll be able to make it until next year. It gives rise to a lot of psychosomatic illnesses, and we are not able to conduct our work in a natural manner to which we were accustomed to prior to this situation. It is indeed a dilemma, and this dilemma is rooted in the idea of death. Death is a very delicate subject to discuss, but nevertheless, I'd like to dive on straight into it. Bhagavad Gita is something that deals with the subject of life, death, forbearance, strength of purpose, resolve, and all these things in a very lucid manner. It is a book having 18 chapters, and today I'd like to discuss in a little detail the second chapter. Now, might as well talk about the first chapter over here, because the first chapter has very little to do with philosophy. It is an introduction into what is to come later on, that is dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. And the opening shloka of the first chapter is when Dhritarashtra, who's a blind man, asks Sanjay, who has the divine powers to be able to see beyond his immediate surroundings into the battlefield of the Kurukshetra. And Dhritarashtra asks him, how is it happening between mine and the Pandavas' armies? How are they positioned? Tell me, O Sanjay. Dharm kshetre kurukshetre samveda yutsava mamaka pandavascheva kim kurvat Sanjay. And Sanjay gives a running documentary about the situation in the battlefield. He talks about the armies of the Kauravas being led by the old Bhishma, who's a brother to the grandsire of the Kauravas and the Pandavas, and Duryodhana goes to Bhishma, and it is Duryodhana who alludes to this characterization of how the armies are standing and who is being led by whom, and so on and so forth. And Sanjay does mention that Bhim, who's leading the army of the Pandavas, is the better of the two leaders, because the magnificent Hulk that he is, he's younger, whereas Bhishma is now jaded. And Duryodhana makes it a point to stress upon the fact that Bhishma ought to be protected from all sides because of his age. And then Sanjay goes on to describe the various insignias emblazoned upon the flags fluttering upon the chariots in the battlefield, especially that of Arjun. which is being driven by Krishna, with 4 white steeds and the emblem of the Hanuman emblazoning its fluttering flag. Now Krishna leads this chariot right in front of Drona, Bhishma and other kinsmen, and Arjuna, who's raring to go like all the other warriors with the heels dug, just waiting to commence with the battle. However, Arjun has played on the lap of his grandsire Bhishma. He has been instructed in the art of archery and warfare by Dronacharya, his guru, who has turned him into such a fine warrior that with his mighty Gandiv, the bow that he wields, his every shot is infallible. It is fatal to bring out the life of his enemies. And over here, Arjun knows very well that he will be responsible for bringing out the life from Bhishma and Dronacharya when given the opportunity, because he is an infallible shot after all. And he is in a dilemma. He is panic-stricken. He is apprehensive. His mouth becomes dry. His hair stands on the ends. And he describes the situation to Krishna, something like, before a Vaiva Vose, before your professor, you're suddenly tongue-tied. He's kind of shell-shocked, and he slumps atop the chariot seat. He sets aside his quiver full of arrows and his bow, and simply, with a very poor body language, shows a reluctance to fight any further. This is the 47th shloka of the first cantos, and I think it is the key to this chapter because it leads to the entire plot in the coming chapters. Eva Muktar Arjun Sankhe Ratopasta Upavishat. And now in this battlefield, Sankhe refers to the battlefield. Ratopast Upavishat, simply sits, slumps down upon the seat. Visraj, he sets aside Sasharam Chapam, his quiver full of arrows, and his bow. Chapam refers to the bow. Shokam Sambigna Manasa, bereft, with sadness, with distress, that his mind ceases to function. Sambigna Manasa. Now, coming to the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sanjay goes on to give this running documentary to Dhritarashtra about Krishna seeing the tear-filled eyes, the eyes brimming with tears of Arjun, and he tries to arouse him out of this dilemma. Tam tada kripya avishtam ashnu pura akula ikshanam. Ashnu pura akula ikshanam. The eyes brimming with tears. Vishadantam midam vakyam uvach. Vishadantam midam vakyam uvach Madhusudan. And thus, these are the sentences that are spoken by the slayer of Madhu, the demon, referring to Krishna. And Krishna simply He is not sympathetic to Arjuna. Krishna tries to rouse him up and jostle him out of the situation. And he says, Kutustva kashmallidam vishme samapastitam. How on earth? Kutustva kashmallidam. How does this malignment of your intellect, vishme samapastitam, at this point, at this important hour, how has this corrupted your mind? Kutustva kashmaledam vishma samapastitam. Anadijustam, an oft used word in Hindi which describes a foolish person. Anadi, not being an Arya. Anarya. Anarjustam asvargiya kirtiya karam Arjun. And you, Arjun, the mighty warrior, you're not destined for the glory of a warrior in the battlefield. You're not destined to find a spot with the heavenly bodies. And rolling in the lowly dust art thou, thy minstrel hath no reed to weep for thee. Say the sad story of thy misery. As said Matthew Arnold. No, that was as said Henry de Rosio, somebody, I forgot. To India, my native land. That's the poem. So that's how it goes. And then he goes on to deride by telling Arjun, what importance has befallen you? Klebyam mam smagam apart na etattu padyate. You should not be in such a situation. Shudram hridayor balyam trakwotishta parantapa. And what small-hearted person you become, where your strength. How have you positioned yourself thus? Get out of this. And Arjuna tries to justify his position by talking about not being able to compete against Dronacharya and Bhishma because they are worthy of his worship. The Bhishma Aham Sankhya refers to the war. Bhishma Aham, I and Bhishma. Dronam cha Madhusudan Nayot iti Prayotsami Puja Harao Arisudan. I will not get into this competition of archery against these gentlemen, he says. Then he goes on to describe his moral turpitude regarding the sin of fratricide. He does not want to kill these people because he does not want to have his hands tainted of their blood. He'd rather prefer begging with a bowl than remain the warrior that he is. He says, Guruna hatvai mahanubhavan shreyo hoktam bhaksham apiloke hatvart kamansu guruni heva bhunjan ruddhir prariggadhana. Will all perfumes of Arabia not sweeten these little hands, as Shakespeare would have said? He says, Ruddhir prariggadhana, I will not taint my hand with the blood of these. By killing my Guru, Gurun Hatvahi Mahanubhavan Shreyo Bhoktam Bhaksham Apiloke. I would rather participate in like a wandering beggar than be a warrior. And then Sanjay goes on to describe in another shloka that Arjun suddenly falls silent, just becomes quiet. And in this shloka he uses the term Rishikesham, referring to Krishna. Sanjay is telling Dhritarashtra that after this, Arjun tells Krishna, Rishikesham, the controller of senses. And in the same shloka, on the other hand, he describes Krishna as Govindukta, the source of the pleasures How can it be that on one hand there is the controller of senses, and the other, the source of the pleasures, referring to Krishna? Talks about the flip sides of the coin, the material and the eternal, the ephemeral and the permanent principle. And Krishna is the embodiment of it, the shining example, scintillating. Eva mukta rishikesham gunakesh parantap nayots iti govinda mukta. Nayots iti means I will not participate in this yudh, in this war. Nayots iti over here, govinda mukta, oh releaser of senses, pleasures. Tushrim babuvaha, and thus he fell silent. Well, he became quiet. And now Krishna is again out to cajole this warrior who's shell-shocked. He tries to reason it out that the people who are educated, the people who are wise, do not lament upon something which is not to be lamented upon, that is death. Ashocyan vishochastvam pragyavadan shachbhashase gadasuna nanu shochanti pandita. What is not to be lamented upon? You better be quiet, just keep it cool, he says. And although you're using lofty terms to justify your moral turpitude regarding this fratricide, nevertheless, you're acting foolish, he tells him in very straightforward terms. Then he goes on to describe that this life, this phenomena, it is because how we perceive it. It is because